Hey everybody, Robert with RC Archery, and you're watching Tuesday's Tip of the Week number 97. In this week's video, we're going to talk about creating steadiness in our shot. And this is going to help you no matter your skill level, type of equipment you're using, hunter, target archer, whatever it may be. In our members video this week, we will take this a step further, and we're actually going to talk about how we can mess up the steadiness in our sight picture with our release execution, some areas that we can look at there and help and fix in that areas. And then next week, we will expand on this topic, and then we will deep dive over looking at imbalances, where we're talking about maybe draw length being messed up, loop length, different factors like that. So we'll give you some extra information on that, but let's get started. Okay, so what we're doing here is creating tension between our hands. So that means between the bow hand and between the release hand. And the way that we do this is with the expansion. When we are setting this up, we want to make sure that our chest is level or out, meaning that you're not hunkering down, your shoulders aren't rolling forward, they're in a normal position or even pulled down and back a little bit, whatever your natural posture is when you're not slouching, essentially. The other thing we want to make sure is that our head is in an upright and natural vertical position. Big thing that I see with a lot of archers is they will start dipping their head down or moving their head around, and they'll start trying to adjust because the draw length isn't set up correctly or the peep height isn't set up correctly. So we don't want to do that. If you notice yourself having to do something in that area, make sure that you're finding out what it is, make sure that you're correcting it. Big one is peep height. I see that with a lot of people. When we are creating the actual tension, it's a soft expansion at first to be able to feel the balance of tension between our hands. So this is a drill. This is something that we are not worrying about where an arrow is landing or worrying about our shot execution. Ideally, we're not even shooting a shot when this is going on. But what we're wanting to do is start to slowly expand where we are pushing our bow hand towards the target a little bit and pulling our release hand away from the target a little bit. Now, everybody has a different idea what this means. Some people are very literal with this, and they actually are using their tricep on their bow arm, and they're pushing their arm out, expanding at the elbow, kind of lengthening that joint kind of thing. And then on their release hand side, they're literally using their hand to pull back on the release. This is completely fine if this is what you're wanting to do, and you find your steadiest sight picture with this, or just where you're at in your journey. Nothing wrong with that. What I will recommend is being able to use bigger muscle groups in the body, meaning that your back. You hear a lot of people talk about back tension, but in my opinion, the back tension portion of it is just using the larger muscles in our shoulder, in our back, and in our core to be able to support the bow, and then to be able to increase this expansion. What does this feel like? Well, you can do this in different ways outside of just pushing and pulling like we talked about. You can actually feel like you're separating the hands apart almost by expanding the chest outward. So if you were to stand up upright and then just start pushing your chest out and pulling your shoulder blades back and down together equally on each side, that will expand the distance between our hands. Now, on a compound bow, you may not really be expanding the distance. You may just be increasing the tension, so keep that in mind. A lot of the times, the back walls on these modern bows are very firm, and you're not actually moving much or at all in this drill. You're just increasing tension. The increasing of the tension, when it relates to release execution, if you use a tension release, a thumb button release, or a hinge release, or even an index release, that increase in tension between the hands is what fires that release. All right, now let's talk about actually studying our float and what is happening to the overall movement while we're doing this drill. You can see here I've got a couple different views. One is just looking through my scope. That way you can see the movement, you kind of see the target and see what we're going on here. The other one is a Mantis program. And keep in mind, Mantis program, where that X is in the middle, is where the shot fired. So it doesn't always mean that it's necessarily the middle of the target. So keep that in mind. What I like to do when I'm looking at this is just look at the overall movement. One thing that we want to talk about and look at here is keeping the balance of the tension in our bow hand and our release hand even. If you start overpowering this with just your bow hand or your release hand, you will start pushing yourself to the left of the target if you're using more bow hand, or you'll pull yourself to the right of the target if you're using more your release hand for a right-handed archer. Now, when we're doing this and it's slow, we're trying to keep them more even and keep the pressure increasing evenly between both hands, and then watching what is happening with the overall movement. Again, we're not worried about shooting a shot here. We're not worried about where an arrow will land or anything like that. This is just a starting point. This is also going to help us figure out if our draw length or our loop length is long or short. Now, when we are doing this, we are looking to slow and shrink the total pattern of what we're seeing on target while we're doing this drill. If you start going through this and that expansion is happening and you notice that the sight picture never slows down, the overall pattern never starts to shrink, maybe it gets wavier, maybe it gets bigger, maybe the bow starts feeling heavier, big indicator there that we are too long on our draw length or our loop length, depending on what we're feeling with our hands, pressures, and what we're seeing on target. And not reverse, if it gets really buzzy or fast, then we're too short. Usually on the loop length in this part, but it could be the draw length as well. I've got some other videos that I've done in the past over just setting up draw length and loop lengths. I will link them in the description of this video. Check those out. You can see more info on that. When we're going through this, we're looking for creating our window of opportunity, or what a lot of people refer to is a shot window. The shot window is going to be that time frame when during this expansion we notice that the sight picture is getting smaller and we notice that we're getting steadier. Now keep this in mind, this is relative to the type of equipment you are using, where you're at in your archery journey, and where you are at day to day or even shot to shot. It can change, but it's creating a consistent starting point in shot window for us, and that's what we're looking for. And over time, things can get better. You can advance as an archer, you can adjust your equipment. There's a lot of different factors that play into this. But we're looking to find that steadiest amount of time and find that steadiest amount of movement and see how long we can keep that there. Eventually, our shot's going to start breaking down. We're going to reach the point where we can't expand anymore. You're going to see the sight picture. Sometimes it gets big and loopy. Sometimes you see erratic movement. It may get busy. Everybody's a little different here. You may see some erratic jumps and movements, stuff like that. But that's kind of that end of that shot window where we need to abort and we need to get out of that shot. But this is what we're looking for, and this slow expansion will help you fine-tune your draw length and your loop length, but it will also help you as a shot sequence setup. Okay, let's talk about putting this into practice now. So I mentioned really quickly at the end of that last segment about our shot sequence. For me, when I'm teaching an archer, especially early on in their career, or even myself, when I am looking at maybe some issues happening, some breakdowns, and I need to get back to the basics, I am using this drill as essentially a version of my shot routine. So I am getting on target, getting to anchor, doing everything like normal, but then I will do that soft expansion and try to feel the pressure that I am needing that day in order to get to my steadiness. So that way I know that if I'm a little bit nervous or a little bit looser in my sight picture that day, I may need a little bit more pre-expansion and pre-tension in that shot to start it. Or some days I'm just relaxed, so I don't need as much. I'm just holding steadier that day. My heart rate is lower, my body is a little bit more calm, whatever it may be. Your muscles are a little bit, more fresh. But using this as a starting point before you start your shot execution will help you a lot, because you minimize the shots that go off target and minimize the misses and the problems that you may have when you're shooting this way, because you are not starting a shot until you've come to a good float pattern and a good size of that float. So you have a better chance of hitting the middle or hitting the target of whatever you're aiming at, whether that be an animal or a target or whatever is going on, and it should help you a lot more. All right, so as we talked about in the first of the video, next week we will take this a step further. We'll talk about imbalances, draw length, loop length areas, things that you need to look for and things that can help you as you're doing these drills. Thank you for watching. I'll see you soon.